Hey Raindrops, welcome back to episode 2 of Insane in the Q&A, the series in which I take your comments and I answer them in video format for you all. Today we're going to be looking at the comments from the last Q&A video and just some other ones that happen to pop up on the channel, and I'll be answering them to the best of my ability for you all. As always, this show is fueled entirely by your guys' comment questions. If you haven't already, please take the time to consider asking a good question that you think would help enrich some other people's musical experiences, and leave it in the comments below. Well, right there, me from the past. Just wanted to let you guys know that the next episode of the Q&A is going to be filmed outside of my studio with Sab Irene. So if you got any questions for both of us, please leave them in the comments below and specify if you want both of us to answer, just one of us to answer, something like that. If you don't know who Sab Irene is, basically imagine me, but the girl version. She does video game music, jazz covers on saxophone on her channel as well, and her channel will be linked in the description. That's all I gotta say, so back to me from the past. For now, let's start with the questions. Jayyblamesthegame asks, do you know your MBTI personality type? I'd guess ISTJ. Yes, I do. I took the test a couple years ago, or a year ago, and I think I retook it more recently, and both times I think I've got INTJ or ISTJ, so it's pretty similar overall. I don't know exactly what those letters mean, but I know that the first one means introverted, and the last one means judgment or something like that. I don't know exactly what they mean, but from what I remember taking the test, I think they described my personality pretty well in the same way that I would evaluate my own without having taken the test. Personally, I think it was pretty accurate, and you can use that information to, stalk me or know whatever you want to know about me, but there it is for you. RobinHood East asks, man, I wish I was around for the Q&A. Well, you're in it now. What do you feel is the VGM song that most tested your skills as a musician? In terms of my personal arrangements, I would say my Dark World arrangement was one of the hardest things I've had to play on this channel. Mainly it's because of there's that one lick in the chorus section that goes That song was really difficult to arrange. It was inspired by a song called Two Timers off of one of Victor Wooten's albums called Palmistry. I had to play that not only on sax, but on keyboard at the same time, and there were just so many other little intricate, difficult things that were present in that song that make it one of the most difficult arrangements I've ever written for myself to play. Porp109 asks, do you lift, bruh? The answer is yes. My dad is a powerlifting coach, and I did powerlifting / just, weight training throughout all of high school. I've competed in some of the Washington State powerlifting meets. I even went to the state meet once. It was a really interesting sport. It's different than a lot of other sports that you get involved in that involve teams. While there is still a team component in the powerlifting meets, it's a very individual sport in terms of what you can accomplish, because if you miss a lift, it's all your fault, and I think that's what I like about it the most. Also, just going to the gym, and by the gym I mean a garage, because our garage is a gym. There's no cars in it, just a bunch of weight training gear. By doing that twice a week, it really helps you build up the ability to focus more, and the ability to just understand that putting in practice, no matter how grueling it may be, will eventually lead and give you good rewards. And I think it's very similar to practicing music in that way, or I guess any skill that you're developing, is that practice may not be very fun or enjoyable sometimes, but as long as you show up and do it, you will definitely see rewards. Eric L asks, when you listen to music, do you find yourself paying more attention to the production aspect or the harmonic / theoretical aspect of the music? I guess an additional question to tack onto this is to ask how you improved your music production, specifically in mixing and mastering. The best way to answer this question, I think, comes from this paper that we read in one of my liberal arts classes at Berkeley. It was called Liberating Aesthetics, and it wasn't my favorite class, but I did learn a lot in it. And one of these papers we read was by Aaron Copeland, who discussed the different levels of musical listening, and he refers to 3 different planes of listening. One is from a purely practical standpoint, which refers to listening to music as background music or to set a mood. One is emotions, or allowing the music to impact you in a certain way. And then the another is from the musician's perspective, is an understanding how they made those emotions happen, or what went into the process of making the music, which I suppose includes the mixing and mastering phase as well. I pay attention to all of these things. Whatever particularly stands out to me in a certain piece of music I will definitely listen to. There are certain times in which I'm trying to learn something from a particular song in which I'll pay attention to the production aspect more. Also, if there are certain times that I'm trying to learn something harmonically from a song, I'll pay attention to the harmonies of the song more, or even spend time transcribing it. And it's through this process of listening to tracks that are better than yours, or that you think are better than yours, and assessing what is different between that track and my track. That is what helps you get better at production. Also, just, there are YouTube tutorials out there for everything. Forums are great places if you're looking for advice on plugins or specific things to do. I always say that knowledge of a plugin is so much more important than actually having a really good EQ or something like that, because it's one thing to have a good EQ, but if you can't use it, then it doesn't mean anything. Dinkleberg asks, have you ever wanted to make a jazz cover of a song in a certain film or TV show? So to tell the truth, I haven't watched TV in 3 years. It's been a long time since I actively followed a TV show. I can't remember the last one I did. I've watched movies since then, and I haven't really I don't think I've really had an urge to make any arrangement of a song from a film. I mean, if I did, I would probably do it. The idea of video game jazz covers is just something I've kind of grown into, and I don't intend for it to be a restrictive label, as in I'll cover whatever song I really want to, or whatever song I think would sound really cool. And it just so happens that I have the most exposure to video game music, just being in this community and playing games very often. So naturally, I think I am most inclined to do covers from video games, which isn't to say that I'll never do something from an anime or a TV show or a film. It's just I haven't really had the urge to. GCCodeS writes, is there a way that you practice sax that works very well for improving? What do you do in your 2HR practice routine every day? Also, any songs in specific that would be good for improving? Let's go back to front. In terms of songs that would be good for improving, I don't really approach practicing that way. A lot of guitar players or players of chordal instruments will learn songs or melodies that they like in an effort to become more familiar with the instrument when they just start out. And that's fine if you're just wanting to get into the instrument and have some external motivation to keep practicing. But the way I approach practicing is much more goal-oriented. When I say that I have a 2-hour practice routine, to me it doesn't mean that I have to be there for the 2 hours. It means that I have goals that I set, or I have specific things I want to accomplish that'll, probably take me 2 hours to work on, sometimes less, usually not more, but sometimes less than 2 hours. So to answer what I do in my practice routine, for any serious practice that I'm doing, I usually start with long tones on every pitch of the instrument for a whole note at 60 BPM. I start on middle B, and I go down to the low notes, and then I go up until about usually as high as I can play, usually altissimo D or something like that. That way I know that there are no sticky pads or anything with the horn, and that I'm confident that I can get a good sound out of each single note, which I think is something that you should really aspire to do always, even when you're just not necessarily focusing on tone quality with your practice. Even if you're just practicing a scale for the sake of getting the scale into your muscle memory, you should still really, in the back of your mind, or perhaps the front of your mind, be aware that you need to make each note sound really nice and not forget about tone quality for the sake of just getting that muscle memory of the scale. So after that warm-up, usually I have a couple goals I like to work for, be it learning a new tune or being able to play a certain exercise 10 BPM faster or something. It's very goal-oriented, and I think that makes a lot more sense than just putting 2 hours in. When you put the 2 hours in, you can leave there without actually having done anything, And I think it's really important to actually make tangible improvements with every single practice session. That's why I actually have a logbook, and I keep track of everything I do. I've been working on altissimo major scales descending from the highest diatonic note in the scale, which probably sounds really complicated to all you guys who aren't saxophone players, but bear with me. So I'll be playing a G major scale, and I'll start on altissimo D, and then I'll slur that all the way down to maybe middle G or something, the G above middle G, I guess. So G with the octave key on, then I'll go all the way back up, and I do that at a certain BPM. The next day I'll try and get it, 5 or 10 higher, and it's just a process of the process of repeating that makes that skill come more fluently to you. That's just one example of what I'll do. Sometimes it's working on any sort of classical etude. Those are fun to work on. Scales, arpeggios. These are just some examples of things that I do. really you want your I think your practice routine should really be shaped to what you want to accomplish. And so while it is beneficial to look at other people's practice routines, I don't think you should necessarily copy them. Everybody has different goals, and if you should set a goal for yourself in a way that you want to sound, and you should be able to structure a practice routine that you think will get you to that point. And I think that's really important. Cole Clark writes, Insane in the Music, this Q&A was great. I was wondering if you could help explain how to improvise a solo and make it sound less like a high school jazz band member. Thanks. I was there at one point. I was a high school jazz band member, and my solos did sound like a high school jazz band member. My advice is to transcribe. Transcribing will change your world. When I first started transcribing in high school, it was very difficult to get into, just because it takes a lot of time to go through an entire solo and write it all out or learn it by ear. But by learning solos by ear, you start to gain some vocabulary, and vocabulary is really, really important when it comes to soloing, because without vocabulary, you have nothing to play. It's like, you can't really do this, but it's like trying to speak in a conversation without words, like words are the building blocks of phrases, and phrases are what communicate things to people. So if we don't have any words, how can we even try to communicate something to people? Some people, when they're first starting out, will just go up and down scales, when they first start improvising, they'll play a blues and say, oh, this is the C major scale, so they'll go up and down the C major scale. That's like saying the alphabet and saying, oh, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, and then going backwards, which is also kind of difficult. Bottom line, you need words, and you get words by listening to solos or listening to people who have already mastered the language of jazz. The analogy here is words are licks or phrases, and you want to steal those words and incorporate them as a part of your own vocabulary. And then once they've become fluent, then you can incorporate them into your own stuff. I think that's how jazz musicians have done it, for over the course of history, and it's worked well for them, and it's worked well for me too. So I think that's something that is very important in terms of getting your solos to not sound so high school. Shinnogo writes, love the Q&A. I started listening to your stuff over the last couple of months. Thank you. My question, more of a YouTube question than a music question, I guess, would be, being someone who would like to eventually get into doing YouTube covers myself, how important would you say having a video recording in addition to the audio of a piece be, particularly for those just starting or looking to start? Should this be a major factor to consider before starting, or should the video aspect come later so one can get the music out earlier? Apologies if you covered this question elsewhere. So this does relate to my philosophy on when the best time is to start uploading a cover, and that time is yesterday. The next best time is now. If you want to put music out there on the internet, the best time to start is absolutely now, or better yet, you've already started. For this specific question regarding video, the thing is, look at the platform you're using. This is YouTube. YouTube is a video sharing site. Why would someone come to YouTube if they just want to hear audio? Some people do that, but there's a reason why there's a video player, and there's a reason why you upload an MP4 file or some type of video file, not an audio file. If you want to do audio, then just go with SoundCloud, because they don't require that, and that's perfectly fine if you want to go down that avenue. But YouTube, bottom line, is a video sharing platform, and you need to have a video because, one, it'll do so many better things for you in terms of getting people to watch and keeping them listening to your music, because whether you like it or not, people do listen with their eyes. I've heard that phrase a lot. To sum it up, I would say that a video is extremely important, and that's why you almost never see me put out a video with just, a static image. Some people do that, and I think it's a strong misuse of the platform. Like, you have a video sharing website, you might as well put a video to it, you don't have to have the best camera. As long as, if you have good audio and bad video, that combination isn't too terrible. What's worse is really good video and bad audio. That's hard to watch and listen to. But if you have a decent video, even something filmed with your phone. My phone is a Nexus 6P, and this thing can shoot like really good video. And I suppose I could use this for covers, but I already have a better camera to use. Bottom line, having something I think is better than having nothing in terms of the video department. Jack Frost asks, do you ever have times where you lack motivation to play or practice music for whatever reason? Sometimes I find I don't have very much motivation to practice when, in the back of the mind, getting better is a pretty big goal for me. Do you have strategies for overcoming that kind of feeling? Yes, it happens to all of us, and it happens to anybody who has to, who's working on something that has a big goal. You will never always feel like you want to practice, but you always should. Depending on your goals, you should. I don't practice as much here at school, but that's because my goals right now are more of getting more content out for the YouTube channel and making my arrangements that much better. One of my sax teachers at Berkeley gave me some really good advice regarding this, and he suggested to separate the emotional aspect of practicing like from the act of practicing itself, which that came across pretty strange to me at first, because playing an instrument and making music in general is a very emotional experience, right? And it's meant to be an emotional form of expression. However, what he's saying here is that regardless of how you're feeling, you still need to show up and do the work, because even if you're not, really feeling like you should practice, you will still get benefit out of practice if you go and do it. I guess I'll do the Shia LaBeouf thing. Just do it! I'm sure that'll be fun to edit. But really, it is one of the best ways of but really just doing it is the only way to get things done. If the more time you spend thinking about not doing something, that's more time that you could have been spending doing that thing. Oh boy, I messed up with that one. Another strategy you might want to try is the Pomodoro technique, which I have employed in practicing and also just general productivity, which is where you set a timer for 25 minutes and you work on something with the utmost intensity, then you take a 5-minute break. I found that just having a timer on somehow makes me more productive. It forces me to focus, and it gives me like a clock that says, all right, you have to focus for this amount of time until you can take a break, and then just the process just repeats. Sometimes I go even over the 25 minutes if I really gain momentum in terms of practicing. I think momentum is a big thing to consider here. The state you are in before you are practicing is a state of zero momentum, right? And then when you get into your state of practicing, that momentum goes up because you've already started. And the more you practice, the more momentum ideally the more momentum you will accumulate. And as you continue practicing, you'll have less and less of a desire to stop practicing until you get towards the end when you've finished your routine. xiaohughes writes, "Hey Carlos, awesome video, and here's my question for you. Since you mentioned evoking emotion in music theory, do you look to tap into certain emotions with your arrangements that might not necessarily be in the original works? / do you find some emotions to be more important than others per piece? Or do you try and use the emotions already written in the original compositions to come out in your own work? I'd love to know your thoughts and really enjoy your arrangements. I hope to continue growing as a..." I guess it just cut off right there. In general, I do strive to retain the emotions of the original piece in terms of my arrangements. I've noticed that in the past when I have experimented with songs and put them in a style that does not necessarily maintain the same purpose or does not serve the song as well as the original does, people do tend to respond to that pretty negatively. For example, I did a cover of City Escape with Sab Irene a very, very long time ago, and we took it pretty slow, and a lot of people reacted pretty negatively to that. Not that that really influences my arranging a whole lot. Like, I don't really care too much about negative criticism that isn't backed up with evidence. But it really made me think that, if I'm going to cover a song or write an arrangement of a song, unless I have a very specific vision for it, I think I do tend to keep the emotional message pretty similar to the original. Because emotions are very subjective, I understand that some people may feel that a certain arrangement I did does not really does not really serve the original in the same way that the original song serves itself, I suppose. But emotions are subjective, you can't win everything, and bottom line, it's just me having fun writing really good arrangements. Bassoonify asks, what priority of scales and melodic patterns in all keys would you suggest to someone trying to improve their improv? Let me preface my answers to this by saying that I don't think that you should really you shouldn't become an entirely pattern-based improviser. A lot of Coltrane's work in the Giant Steps era had a lot of patterns in it because he was trying to find ways to play over the triple tonic system thing that he devised. As for patterns, I would say find a song that you like to listen to, find a lick that really strikes you, then take that one and learn it in all 12 keys. Because I don't think there's much point to learning a pattern if you don't like it. You might as well learn stuff that you like, and then you'll be able to incorporate that stuff that you like into your own playing. For scales, I recommend all the modes of the major scale. Those are much more important than most people think they are. They are so influential to how jazz musicians play over chords, whether they know it or not. The ones that are most important are probably Ionian, Dorian, Mixolydian, and Lydian. Phrygian isn't as used very often. Aeolian is used sometimes, and Locrian is not used as much. Also, the different variations of the Mixolydian mode: Mixolydian flat 9, Mixolydian sharp 9 flat 9, Mixolydian flat 13, Mixolydian sharp 9 flat 9 flat 13, Mixolydian sharp 9 flat 9 flat 13 flat 5, which is also altered. The whole tone scale, the dominant, diminished, something like that. Those look those up. Those are all scales to use in diminished patterns. Lydian flat 7 is also an important one to know because that one's used all the time in for tritone substitutions. Those are just all the scales I think that you should be really familiar with. There's a lot of them. And that is all the time that we have for this Q&A. Thank you guys for submitting your questions in the comments, And I encourage you to submit a question if it came to your mind in the comment section below, because as I said before, your comments are the entire reason this show exists. It's like this show is a water wheel, and your comments are the rain that make the stream, that make the water wheel go. That was a great analogy. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next Insane in the Q&A.